Here are some line items. The worst they can do is say no. This is personal finance. It's personal. Hello and welcome back to another conversation about personal finance with me, Kyle. And we got quite the lineup for this particular episode. We're going to be talking about line items for budgets using our personal line items that we include in our budget almost every month. And then also we're going to be talking about the cost of kids. This is a topic that I've been wanting to get into, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit, I believe, in the last episode. And we're going to take it by pieces because it's a long conversation. We could have a lot to talk about when it comes to that. And then we are going to end the conversation by talking about negotiating bills, where we can do that, because obviously in today's world, the haggling and negotiating isn't quite as common as it used to be, but you can definitely do it in certain areas. So we'll talk about that later on in the podcast here. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about budget line items. So if you're new to budgeting, your budget is going to have different categories or line items that you are going to include. They can be included every single month, and they can also be included on occasion when they are needed. So a lot of times when people start out budgeting, we run into this issue of like, okay, cool, I want to make a budget. What do I include? What do I call it? And a lot of times people overthink these things. So we're going to give you some baseline starting points that you can use or you cannot use, whatever you feel like doing. This is just the stuff that we do. And I recommend, I'll include it in a link somewhere in this video, the Budget With Us series that my wife and I do on her channel. If you would like to watch us create a budget, our own personal budget. And we got like 10 of those now. We have almost a whole year of us budgeting on there. So go check those out if you are interested in that. Okay, enough about that. Let's go ahead and get started here. So we use the Every Dollar Budgeting app. And that comes from the Dave Ramsey Solutions Group. And it is free, and we are not sponsored by it, by the way. This is just the app that we have chosen to use, and that's it. You can use something completely different, that's fine. And it is broken down into broad categories, and then inside those broad categories are line items that you create. So the first broad category that we have is the housing one. Now, all of these line items in this housing category are consistent. They pop up every month. The only one that's not consistent is the trash line item. And this is likely to be the same for you as well. So whatever line items you have that have to do with the house are probably going to be very consistent, and you won't have to rethink these every single month. They will just be flowing. So we have the mortgage. Now you may have rent or mortgage, depends on your situation, but you're going to have something there. We have to pay for water. Again, if you're out in the country, you may have a groundwater situation. You may not have to pay for water, but we do. And then we pay for internet. We also pay for electricity and gas in the same bill. Back when my wife and I were renting, we had to actually pay these bills separately. So those would have been separate line items. But because our company that we work with does both for our house, it's all combined into one bill. So that's why we have them combined. Then we have the trash line item. Now this one pops up only once every 3 months because we pay the trash bill once every 3 months. Your situation may be different. And then we have a phone bill where we are paying that once every month. So those are some of the things that we have. Those might be different for you though. You may have to include other things that we do not have to consider. I know some people don't have, say, an escrow where their mortgage Also is their insurance and their property taxes. If you have it somehow separate from that, you would have then separate line items for those things. We do not have those because, again, like I said, it's all combined into one thing. All right, moving along. Transportation. Now, we only have gas as our line item for transportation. You may have more than us because we paid off our vehicles. We don't have in the transportation section a car payment for that. That may be something, though, that you would have to include for your line items in the transportation section. This should be a fairly short section, probably just gas and a car payment. Insurance, you'll likely be pushing that into a different category. Although, if you want to include your car insurance in the transportation category, that's perfectly fine. I don't see an issue there at all. Okay, the next category we have is food. And in there we have just usually 2 line items, but sometimes we add in other ones. The 2 primary ones is groceries and restaurants. So obviously those are very self-explanatory, and you will likely be including those as well. If you're a very well-disciplined family as far as not going out to eat at all, then more power to you. You could just do the grocery line item and completely scratch the restaurant out. We don't have that kind of self-control, so we do include a restaurant line item. Now, in this particular month that I'm filming this in, which is the month of November, we have also included a Thanksgiving food line item. On occasion, when you are budgeting, you will likely have temporary line items that will change from month to month. Obviously, we're not going to be paying for Thanksgiving food in other months throughout the year. It's just for this month. But you will have to sometimes do that, include temporary line items that will be deleted in the future. Now, a lot of budgeting apps will carry over your old line items from one budget to the next. So a lot of your line items that you are going to be consistent from month to month, you won't have to do anything with those. So after your first budget, your next budget is going to be faster because you're just carrying over what you did. It's like copy paste. You're just moving it over. And then you're doing little tweaks here and there. So after we copy paste, we'll delete the Thanksgiving food line item from the month of December because it won't be needed anymore. All right, so moving along. This next category is where things get they vary from person to person. So this is where the personal part of personal finance really comes into play. And that is the personal category. Here are some line items that we use that you could borrow for your own budget. The first one is pocket money. So my wife and I have our own pocket money line item categories. Essentially, this is a line item that allows you to spend your money however you feel without any justification whatsoever. You don't have to tell your spouse why you bought that thing. You just say, this was with my pocket money. It'll save yourself a lot of arguments and a lot of debate, and it'll give you a little bit of freedom in your budget. I know a lot of people feel budgets are constricting. They don't have to be constricting. If you give yourself a little outlet like this, where you can spend a little fun money however you feel, budgeting will feel a lot less restricting for you. So I highly recommend you include a pocket money. You can word it something different if you want, but include some sort of line item where you are able to just spend the money however you feel. It's a fun money type of line item. Now, of course, don't go overboard with that, but it will help you in the long run. Another one that I highly recommend is toiletries and cleaning. Separate that from your grocery bill. All right, 2 different things. So your toiletries and cleaning item. And then if you have kids, diapers and wipes is probably going to be a line item that's going to be very consistent in your personal category. And then if you are saving money for your kids for college or something like that, and you have like an investment account for that, you'll probably want to include that as well. we have a 529 for our kids, so we have a 529 category that we spend all the time. Now, besides that, the rest of the line items in our personal line item are temporary. They change from month to month. This category can have a lot of changes every single month. This is your category where you're going to be throwing in all kinds of different things, varying from month to month, from Christmas shopping to homeschool or to clothing, whatever you're trying to do in that month that needs to be accomplished. Those are going to be done in the personal category. So you'll be adding those line items in and deleting them later. All right, the next one we have, and these ones I'm going to just lump all together because all these categories for us only has one line item, but again, it could have more or look different for you, and that is the lifestyle, health, and insurance categories. In the lifestyle category, we have our pet care line item because we do own a dog, a Labrador. Marley, our dog, needs to be fed and taken care of, so we have a line item just for her. If you don't have animals, you're not going to need that, but if you have a gym membership or other things that would fit in that lifestyle category, that's where you're going to want to include that. Health category, we just have medicine/vitamins. We're fairly young. We got young kids. We aren't really going to the doctors a ton except for routine checkups and those sorts of things. So we just have that one line item. Now in the past, we have had medical debt, and so we would include that in the health category as a monthly payment that we were making. So if you have some sort of medical debt or some other kind of health-related payment that's happening every month, you'll probably want to include that as a line item there. The last one is the insurance category. We only have one there, and that is auto insurance. Remember I told you we didn't include it in the transportation spot. We have it in the insurance spot. It's our only one because our home insurance is tied up in our mortgage with the escrow there. So it's not going to be included in the insurance category. And so that's our only insurance that we have is auto insurance that we've got. So we include it there. All of my health insurance I have through my employer gets pulled automatically before my paycheck has even made it to me. So we don't really include that here because we're only budgeting the money that actually makes it to our bank account. We're not going to budget pre-taxed money that's being pulled beforehand. That's just going to make things too complicated. We're just going to budget the stuff that we already have in our accounts. All right. Now, besides those categories, there is a debt category that the EveryDollar app has, and you can include this in your own budgeting. We just have the student loan debt line item in there, and you could have others, like, again, car payments, although you could put that in the transportation category. And then our mortgage is in the housing category, although we could place it in this debt spot as well. Which leads me to show you, as I'm going through and explaining this, that budgeting is very flexible. It can be very different from person to person based on your spending habits and where you want to put things in categories. So while I'm showing you how we do things, you don't have to follow exactly how we're doing it. You can copy some of our line item ideas if you like, but you don't necessarily have to put them in the categories we put them in. You don't have to use the budgeting app that we use. You can use something completely different that works for you. All right, the last category we have is the savings category. And in here, this one is another one that changes periodically, but there are a couple things, well, in particular, one thing that stays the same, and that is the emergency fund line item. You should probably include an emergency fund line item in your budget. Now, most of the time, we plan to pay $0 in it. Why? Because our emergency fund is already fully funded. It's just $1,000 for right now, but eventually when we want it to grow to 3 to 6 months, we're going to have to start slowly adding money from month to month into that emergency fund to try to grow it to that point. So for right now, for us, it's going $0 because it's fully funded. You will likely want some sort of emergency fund line item as well. And likely once your emergency fund is fully funded, you will be putting $0 into that just like we are right now. You could also include other things in the savings category. We like to put what is called sinking fund line items in this, which is where we basically save money up for big expenses in the future that we would like to buy. So instead of going out and getting a new debt so that we can get that item immediately, we will save ahead of time until we get enough money for it and then buy it with cash so that we can try to avoid adding on debts to our budget. We are following kind of that Dave Ramsey plan, which you might have known from some of the other episodes that I've already talked to, but if you haven't, this is your first one, we have been following the Dave Ramsey plan and we're almost debt-free, besides our mortgage, of course, and we're working on that. And I'm sure we can include a link somewhere talking about debt and our progress and things like that in this video, so you can go and look at those too. But anyway, because of that, we do include line items in the savings category that are sinking funds to help us save up for big purchases so that we can avoid debt. Again, if you don't want to do that and you do want to take on debt for different things, then you don't need to worry about that. Your savings category will be very simple. You just add the line item for an emergency fund and you're probably good from right there. Okay, that pretty much covers all of the line items that we frequently use in our budgets. You could probably find others on the internet. Google line item ideas for budgeting, and I'm sure you will find plenty more where I'm sure you will find plenty more options that could fit your budgeting style. All you gotta do is do a quick Google search for that. All right, we're gonna go ahead and start moving on to the next topic, which is the cost of having kids. And in this particular topic, we're going to be talking about the hospital bill that you get after you have gone through the whole birthing process. So if you haven't had kids yet and you're curious to see what that cost would be, well, we're going to go ahead and share that with you in the next segment here. Okay, so I have mentioned in the past that I have 2 kids. One is 3, his name's Caspian, and the other one is 1, and her name is Ellery. So when we had Caspian, we were not doing any of the Dave Ramsey steps or any of the Dave Ramsey plans. In fact, we really weren't doing a great job of budgeting or really planning and communicating amongst my wife and I. We weren't really communicating very well about finances. And so we went to the hospital. We had Caspian there, obviously Laura doing most of the work there. And then we brought him home, and then we start to get those hospital bills coming in. Now, of course, we got those bills before the insurance would start to cover it, so we got to kind of see the sticker shock of it. And I think I recall that the total process from start to finish was about $20,000. Now, of course, that is before insurance stepped in. Now, my insurance at the time had a deductible of about $3,000. So essentially, the insurance company covered $17,000 of it, and we were left with $3,000 to cover after everything was said and done. Now, that sounds like a lot, and it is. One of the good things, though, if you're an American, obviously if you're international, a lot of this probably doesn't apply to you, and it might sound even foreign to you. So you're just going to have to buckle up and learn some new things about another country's way of doing health insurance and hospital stays. So anyway, for us Americans here that go through this, when we take on medical debt, as far as I'm aware, it is 0% interest. You are simply paying back what you owe, and that's it, which is a good thing because that means that you can't be stuck in a death spiral of getting swamped with interest payments and debt and feel like you're never going to get out of it. Now, I know that there are bills out there that are astronomical, and so people still have huge medical bill debts that they can't cover on their own. And so that, of course, is bad. But what I'm saying is that with a $3,000 bill with no interest, it felt a lot more manageable than a $3,000 bill with, say, 5% interest or something like that. Because then it would have felt like we wouldn't be able to get out from underneath it because we would constantly be paying the interest on it rather than paying down the debt. So the medical debt was 0% interest, and that made it a lot more manageable to pay down. We were able to negotiate a reasonable monthly payment with the hospital and then make those payments. We were actually able to pay off that whole debt in about a year. So we were able to basically pay it down to a reasonable point. I think it was about $1,000 to $1,500. And then we had the money in our checking account to then just pay the rest of it off in full and be done with the debt. Now, the second kid, Ellery, when she came along, we learned some new things about the medical world and system that allowed us to actually get a much cheaper rate, I guess you could say, for Ellery's birth compared to Caspian's. So when we got the news that Ellery was coming, we started getting all the ultrasounds and things like that, and the doctors were concerned about Ellery's size. They felt that she was too small and she needed some additional special tests, and so we had to go to the local or the nearby big city to get those tests done. And then after we did that, we got hit with the hospital bill from that, and we were kind of hit with the sticker shock. I think it was about $1,000, and our insurance really didn't cover it because, again, I had a deductible. I was at a different job that time, and the deductible was about $3,200. So we were basically having to pay for that whole price. Now, the doctor mentioned, though, that we could apply for a financial aid and potentially have it completely written off or pay a reduced price. We had never heard of that before, so we went through the paperwork. We sent it to the company that actually does the tests because it's a special test. It's some company in California. And we sent the paperwork there and they approved it. So we didn't have to pay a dime for that whole ordeal with the testing. And then, of course, the good news was that Ellery, yes, she was small, but there were no abnormalities with her progress. So we were happy. So we got good news, and we didn't have to pay $1,000 for it either. So even we got great news all around from all of that. So after that, we started to realize that, wait a minute, if we could get that written off, are there other things we could do? So when Ellery was born, we got hit with another $20,000+ bill, and then the insurance paid off all of it except for the deductible amount. So we were left with about $3,200 that we would have to pay. We then filled out paperwork for financial assistance from the hospital. And we figured, you know what? If we get half off, hey, we just got half of our money saved. And if they say no, well, then we'll just do the monthly payments like we did with Caspian. And what ended up happening was they approved for the full amount. So we did not pay any of the debt for Ellery's birth. Now, if you are in a situation like that where you could potentially apply for financial assistance from the hospital that you had the birth at, I would recommend doing it. The worst they can do is say no. That's the worst they can do. And if they say yes, even if they give you 50% off, hey, that's half saved. That's better than nothing. And if you're a little bit squeamish about asking for help or assistance, I would just tell you this. The whole of the economy, every person in it, has to make economic choices that are best for them, given the resources that are available to them. If you think the people who are worth billions of dollars aren't making choices that benefit them, then you're crazy. So if billionaires are making decisions that best benefit them within the economic system that we've created, then I'm sure a regular Joe Blow like you and I can make decisions that are best economically for ourselves. So if you're somebody who's a little squeamish about applying for assistance and seeing what happens, all I'm telling you is if it's available to you and it is an economic choice that is beneficial to you, then you should use it because it is available. Think of it like this. Let's say you got laid off of your job, okay? So you have no money. You're unemployed now. And then you're offered a job that pays less and is not really glamorous. It's not a job you want. Do you just deny that job and continue to be unemployed because it wasn't what you wanted to do? Or do you do the best economic choice that you have available to you in order to pay the bills, make it through life? You would probably take the less glamorous job, at least temporarily, until you can find a better one, right? Because that's the best economic choice that's available to you in that moment. So this is no different. If it is a choice that's available to you, you should take it because it is the best choice for you. And you would be crazy to think that people who are way better off than you aren't doing the same thing. Everybody in a capitalist economic system is trying to make the best economic choices for themselves. All right? So don't be too concerned about that. Trust me, the hospital isn't doing it out of the goodness of their own hearts anyway. I'm sure they're getting some sort of benefit for doing financial assistance for people who aren't, super well off. Let's go ahead and move into our last segment for today, and that is talking about negotiating bills. So, we know that haggling and the art of the deal isn't quite as popular now as maybe in many years in the past. And that is because most companies don't want to engage in that kind of stuff with their customers. Instead, it's a take it or leave it type of mentality. But there are still some industries where you can haggle and negotiate prices as the consumer. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple examples from my own personal situation here. So the first one is our internet bill. We have so many people give comments on my wife's channel when she talks about our internet bill, and even in the couple of instances that I've talked about in this smaller channel, people have talked about our internet bill and how cheap it is. It isn't cheap by accident. It is cheap because of negotiation and because of threats and the willingness to follow through with those threats. So let me go ahead and give you a little bit of background so you can see how this works. So when we first moved into this house that you see here, we had only one company that provided good, consistent internet in this area. We live in a small village town, It doesn't have, maybe it has like a couple thousand people in it. It doesn't have a lot to it. So there's one local company. I'm not going to mention their name because then you might be able to figure out where we live. But there's this one local company that basically provided the internet here. And it was essentially a monopoly. They were the only game in town. You had to pay for their service. So we were paying for basically subpar internet about $60 a month, which was a lot more than what I was paying when we were renting in a different town where there was competition. So we dealt with that for at least a year. And then a much larger company came in that you may recognize called Frontier, came in and started laying down fiber optic wires into their small village, and then started basically competing for the same customers that the local company was competing for. And they offered, of course, a crazy deal because they were trying to pull all the customers away from the local company. They were offering about $45 a month to switch to their internet. And they were going to give you 500 megabytes up, 500 down, which at the time we were only getting about 100 or 150 for $60 a month. So $45 felt like an amazing deal. So of course, I called the local company and I said, I'm wanting to cancel my service with you so that we can switch to Frontier. And they said, oh, please don't do it. But I was like, it's a lot cheaper deal for me. And they basically offered nothing. So, because they didn't offer anything, because really they didn't have anything to offer, their internet wasn't great, their service wasn't great, I followed through with the threat. I left. So we switched to Frontier. And since that time, we've been able to keep our bill low. Now, it's not out of the goodness of Frontier's heart. I will let you know that. Frontier wants us to pay probably $60 or $70 a month as well. And they have tried to make us pay that much. I remember after the first year of switching, they bumped it up to $60 a month. And I got a letter in the mail from the local company saying that they were now offering $40 a month for 500 up, 500 down. The same service that we were getting from Frontier. So I called Frontier up and I said, I'm going to switch because the local company has a better deal than what you have. And then they, before I was able to hang up, said, what if we gave you the same offer as them, but for $30 a month? And I told them, yeah, sounds great. We'll stick around. And for a full year, we only paid $30 a month for internet. And then this past year, same thing happened again. They were going to bump it up to, I think it was $65 a month. And again, the local company, trying to win back a lot of the customers they lost in this village, sent out another offer for $40 a month. But this time, it was going to be 1 gig up and 1 gig down. So again, I call Frontier, telling them I'm going to switch. And what do they say? We'll give you 1 gig up and 1 gig down, and we'll throw in a free router, and we'll let you pay $40 a month, just like them, if you'll stick around. And what did I say? Sounds great. We'll stick around. So the story that I'm sharing here is you need to be willing to call your companies that, like your internet company or phone company or whoever, and threaten to switch. And if they say, sure, go for it, then you need to follow through with the threat. So don't make a threat you're not willing to follow through on. You need to be willing to commit to the threat. And if they are willing to negotiate, great, stick around. If they're not, like I said, make the switch. Now, I'm going to share one more with you, and this is auto insurance. And really, this could be any insurance. You could do home insurance too and other ones. But a lot of times, when you stick with an insurance company for a while, they slowly bump up the rate as time goes on. Because again, they're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They want you to pay as much money as possible. And like boiling a frog in some hot water, you slowly raise the temperature. That's what they're doing to you. They're slowly raising the prices. So when you get letters in the mail from other insurance companies saying that they could potentially save you X amount of dollars, you should probably take them up on the offer. See if they actually are willing to play ball, because they may actually give you a much better deal than what you're currently getting from your current insurer. So we used to have another large insurance company called Auto Owners. Maybe you've heard of them before. And they were going to jack up our rates by an astronomical amount. I think it was $500+ for the premium for our home, because we had home and auto bundled with them. And I think it was a few $100s more for our cars. So it was going to be a big change. So I called a different company that I had received a letter in the mail from saying that they could save me money, and they gave me an incredible deal. And then I took that offer and I presented it back to Auto Owners and said, hey, can you compete with this? And they said they couldn't compete with it. So I said, all right, then we're done here. And I went to the new company and said, we'll take the deal. And we are now saving, so we were paying about $210 or $15 a month for both of our cars. And now we're paying $146 a month for both of our cars. So we saved close to, what is that, $70 a month just on that. Our home insurance was going to be over $1,200 or something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers that Auto Owners was going with. And right now we're paying $600 for the full year with this new company. Now, do I imagine it's going to stay that way for the long haul? No, I do not imagine it's going to be that way. It's likely going to be slowly ticking up. And as they do that, I will then have to go through with the threat of switching again. So, the big takeaway for you, if you've been listening through both of these stories, is that when you have opportunities such as your phone bill, your internet bill, your insurance, those sorts of things where you're able to potentially negotiate or switch, you should take that opportunity. Yes, it is a little bit of a hassle having to fill out new paperwork or having to make a phone call and those sorts of things. But if you're saving hundreds, potentially thousands of dollars, it's probably worth it in the long haul to make that phone call. All right? Because here's the thing I really want you to take away from this. Loyalty doesn't pay. Loyalty does not pay. There is no such thing as getting a letter from your internet company or your auto insurance or your phone bill company or whoever you're doing this with. You're not going to get a letter from them saying, gee, thank you for sticking around for 5 years. We're going to give you a discount on the bill that you've been paying. No, the exact opposite is going to happen. They're instead going to look at it and go, wow, this sucker has been paying us for 5 years. Let's jack up their rates some more and see if they'll stick around. That's exactly what they're thinking, because it's a business. And if you're not willing to leave, then they'll continue to boil the frog until you choose to finally quit. So again, you're in charge of your money. This is personal finance. It's personal. You need to focus on what you can control. And this is something that you can control. You can control who you're paying your money for, insurance and all these different things. Threaten to switch, and if they call your bluff, follow through with it. All right. That is all I got for today for this episode. If you enjoyed listening through all of this, if you've learned something new, or maybe you have some extra information that you could potentially add to what I have already talked about, go ahead and leave that in the comments down below. And if you want to stick around and hear more of this stuff, go ahead and like the videos, subscribe to the channel, do all the YouTube things, and we'll see you on the next one.